100 hours
It's
in
19
Gabon and Italy and noon in Texas.
We're trying to be on time. Saludos, bienvenidos, welcome, benvenuti. Soy Lourdes Perez.
And I'm Dr. Annette Darmada.
Today we have our second day of this first Radio VoxFem festival. It has been an amazing start yesterday, and we're going to continue all the way to the 12th of March. This is International Women's Month, but as we say in VoxFem, every day is International Women's Day. We are very honored today to have with us Rebecca Flores. She's an example of someone who leads by service and integrity. She is living history. And we met in Austin decades ago. And
as a little baby activist.
That's true. Baby activist, met Rebecca Flores. That is an amazing honor. To put it simply, when Rebecca calls you on the phone, usually we find ourselves saying yes before we even know what the call is about. So it's an immense honor to have you here. I'm going to do an introduction, a formal introduction of Rebecca Flores. And followed by a formal introduction of Laura Varela, who did the film for Rebecca Flores. So Rebecca Flores grew up in a Texas migrant worker family in Atascosa County. She graduated Fox Tech High School in San Antonio. After working in a civil service job for the Army, she earned an undergraduate degree in sociology from St. Mary's University. And a master's degree in community organizing from the University of Michigan in 1972. She returned to South Texas in 1973 and began working for the United Farmworkers. Cesar Chavez appointed Flores state director in 1975. In her work with the United Farmworkers, Flores has organized farm workers, provided services, led boycotts and union political campaigns, and lobbied the Texas legislature, winning enactment of important legislation on workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, field sanitation, minimum wage, pesticides right to know, and abolition of the short-handed hoe. It's such an amazing honor. Bienvenida, welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. And this is part of a larger documentary that our beloved Laura Varela is doing. So Laura Varela is a documentary filmmaker whose work is shaped by her roots growing up in the US-Mexico border in El Paso, Texas. Her work crosses cultural, linguistic, and physical borders through the use of film and contemporary art installations. She now resides in San Antonio, where she works as a filmmaker and artist. Valera Film recently merged with Chica Media, a mission-driven creative agency and digital networks. Varela documentary, As Long as I Remember, American Veteranos, was broadcast on PBS from 2010 to 2016. She is currently producing and directing the documentary Raúl Salinas, The Poetry of Liberation for PBS. She is a recipient of multiple national awards. In 2016, she co-founded the Texas-based nonprofit organization Growing Empowered Together, whose mission is to amplify young leaders and artists' voices and encourage voter and civic participation. Varela Films recently merged with Chica Media digital networks, with an expansion of both missions is now underway. Her work as a media artist has been exhibited at the San Antonio Museum of Art, Blue Star Contemporary Art Center, at the UTSA Downtown Gallery, public art projects that include iconic spaces like the Alamo, San Fernando Cathedral, and San Pedro Springs in San Antonio. Varela lectures and screens her work around the country, and in recent years has taught courses on documentary film at the University of Texas in San Antonio. And most important, and we love this, is that she joined our team as producer for VoxFem and VoxFem Chicana India. Welcome.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It's an honor to be here.
We really love to, and we really love to, share, there's no way to say what someone has done in all of these years of work, but it's nice to hear, I think, at least a little bit more complete summary of,
Yes.
And that's part of the history of women. A lot of it is invisibilized, and women are often doing and not telling you what they're doing, like for years, and often have to be reminded of what they did. So we're here to remind everybody, because an individual woman's history is what makes up all of women's histories.
Yes, exactly. So starting with that, I wanted to ask Rebecca to tell us about this photo that we have behind us. You were telling us a story, so I would like for you to tell others.
Gorgeous photo.
Well, that actually also is one of my favorite photos because it captures a lot of what I was doing, right? In most of my time with United Farmworkers. But that photo is taken in 1979. I had just had my youngest child, Sara, and she was 6 weeks old there. And so I had been home. She was born in July, and I had been home all of August. And you know how hot it gets in South Texas. I was living in a house there in Far, Texas, which is, right on the border. And we had no air con. We had no, those houses were really not, air conditioned or anything. So I said to Jim, my husband at that time, I said, let's just get out of here and go to the convention in California, because they used to have biannual conventions in Fresno. And so we just packed up the kids in our little car, in our little station wagon, and trekked across, Highway 10 through the southern states, the southwestern states of Arizona, hot and hotter. And we took I remember taking a little pool, one of those little plastic pools that we would blow up and fill up with water. And so when we stop at the roadside stands, we would fill it up with water, and the boys and the kids would get in and get wet a little bit.
Oh.
Anyway, well, so we got to the convention, and Caesar just loved babies. He just loved them. And so there I was with my little six-week-old girl, and he says to me, and here we have Rebecca Flores and her she has a newborn child. And so he says, raise up that child. And so I raised up Sara, and everybody was clapping and hooting and hollering and stuff. But the women, you know how Mexicanas are, right? Is that they were all saying, oye, pero ¿por qué no estás en tu casa? Why aren't you at home? You shouldn't be out. You know how they had us wrapped our heads, and we couldn't sweep and all that business. I don't know if you all know
after birth, right?
Yeah.
40 days.
Yeah, you had to stay and stay in. You couldn't be traveling around. And they were all, upset with me. I mean, I would meet them, going to the bathroom for change the baby, and they would just be telling me, you should be at home right now. But anyway, that picture though, I found it years later in Salinas. This guy told me, hey, there's a picture of you. And you know what? I look at myself there, and I really don't recognize myself. You all say I look the same, but I really don't recognize myself. Anyway, so this person says, there's a picture of you inside at the Salinas UFW. I went there. I don't know what I was doing in California at that time. And sure enough, there it was. And I have never found who the photographer for that. I have asked around, because I use that a lot. And I've never found who took that photo, which I think is probably one of it just brings home a lot of the work that I did, which is really, hauling around my children to everything that we did in the union, because that was what I did for 30 years.
Wow. That is beautiful. Amazing.
I think it's really funny there next to is a portable radio. You see it over here to the
Oh yeah, let me get out of the way.
It wasn't mine. We didn't have a portable radio, but somebody had taken a portable radio.
Wow.
That's great. That's great. No, that is a great photo. I hope somebody knows it. So we couldn't find the who took the photo either.
Yeah. I looked. I've asked of all the photographers who were working with the union at that time, and they said no, that they didn't take that. So I'd be interested in knowing, because it's a pretty good photo. Captures a lot of the information that you want to talk about.
Mhm.
That's beautiful.
That is
So,
beautiful.
Laura, we talked about we talked about doing this interview with Rebecca Flores, and next thing you know, you're at Our Lady of the Lake University. This is during quarantine. You figured out how to safe distance and safely do it in a space that was facilitated by Dr. Amy Villarreal at Our Lady of the Lake. And once we're doing the interviews like we're doing for everybody, but it quickly became apparent that this was way more. What was needed was more than just a short interview. This is a very necessary documentary that needs to be made. You want to tell us about that?
Thank you, Annette and Rudis. Hi, everybody. Rebecca.
Hi.
Yeah, well, we were originally going to do our Changemaker series, and this is still part of our Changemaker series, right? But yeah, after this lengthy interview and connecting with Dr. Amy, Rebecca connected us, realizing that they had already done, I believe, 50th anniversary program on the UFW in South Texas, right?
Yes.
And so recognizing that there's archives and there's stories, and Rebecca's work is for sure much bigger than what I had originally thought, her role in the movement. And yeah, so now we want to just kind of continue this, hopefully collaborating with these institutions that have the archives, like Our Lady of the Lake University. They have special collections there as well, and their program, Mexican American Studies program. Also, we want to work with the photographers who were documenting the movement at the time. Hopefully we'll get to collaborate with Alan Pogue, because he has many photos of the UFW. So we're exploring all of that, and hoping for sure to expand this film. Absolutely.
So we have this incredible, necessary content on one of our women heroes, one of our heroes in general, and we have an incredible filmmaker to do the work. And one of the things, doing film is expensive, and so there's always that dilemma: how do you fund something like that? And one of the things we came up with is we want to do is provide a unique opportunity for small dollar donors. If you've always wanted to see your name in the credits of a film, we're going to put out there that anyone who wants to donate $25 or above to the film, to this documentary, we'll put your name, and it can be your name or in memory of someone. Yes. We have a lot of people have lost people, and that was asked to me, and yes, absolutely. And however you want it listed, we'll list it. So that's on our website, voxfem.org. I'm going to put that information there. And I even thought about this. Even if right now some people don't even have the $25, if you have more and you're a film philanthropist, come on down. But
yes.
But if you're somebody who really this movement is important to you, and the story of Rebecca Flores is important to you, and the work of Laura Varela is important to you, and right now you really don't have that, private messages always for anything like that, and we always find we can work out a trade. We can do some volunteer work for VoxFem, and if something's important to you, always private messages. Okay.
Yes.
So do you want us to show so what do we have? What are we seeing today, Laura?
Yes.
What is this that we're going to see?
Okay, so we spent a day with Rebecca in an interview situation there at Our Lady of the Lake University, where she talked about her time as an organizer, as an activist, her life in South Texas. So this is just a small clip of that interview where she talks to us about the conditions and the situation with the organizing there in South Texas for women with the UFW.
Okay.
And how to organize them. Yeah, I mean, I think Rebecca could explain a little, or we could just show the film.
Yeah. Afterwards, we're going to talk more. We're going to be able to talk more. If you want to join and ask questions, you can join by Zoom, and you can also put the questions in the comments on Facebook. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead.
There's no sound, Laura.
Yeah, I cannot hear it either.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna start.
Hold on.
You could hear it now.
Okay, hold on 1 second. We're going to start over.
Yes.
Make sure you're sharing computer sound,
Yeah, we are.
and we will mute.
Yeah, mute yourselves. Okay. All right.
The crews in the field were enormous. There was hundreds of people working in the crews, and the crew leaders had pretty much control over what happened, of how much they were paid. It was really a dominating, force there. But they always picked a girlfriend, a young girl, and they would take her and they would sit her in their truck, and everybody knew it. Everybody knew it, and there was a lot of sexual harassment of women. Women would wear skirts, would wear dresses over their pants because they didn't want to expose themselves. And so those were some of the issues that people raised. There was a lot more. There was a lot more. But we started doing those house meetings in 1978, in the early months of 1978. And I was probably in my 30s. I had already had two of my children. My two boys were born in 74 and 75, and they were little. And so these meetings, took up a lot of my life. The women who were sitting around the kitchen table would want to join, right? And I remember one particular case. This woman she was an activist. You could tell it in her eyes. She had 12 kids, and she looked at her husband and she said, Shall we join the union? And he was like ducking his head, which meant, we don't want to be part of this. And then she said, yeah, but I want to be. And the reason really was because she had a newborn. She had a newborn pretty much the age of my newborn. And so she said, and so their cue and the way they sold their membership into the union was, what, if Rebecca can do this work and be with her children, then we can do it also. And so we saw because there were so many women in the union, we saw so many women join. There was men and women in the fields, right? But women had still there was discrimination in pay and in work. And this photo in back of me shows this woman with a knife working in the cabbage field. Women wanted to work in cabbage because it was paid on the hourly rate. But those jobs were generally given to men because they thought that men could work harder and longer than women could. And I remember women coming up to me and saying, they won't hire me in cabbage because they don't think I can do it. She says, but I have to work because I'm a single mother and I got to earn more and more money. And so they always relegated women to even the least paying jobs, and that was in the amarre, which was doing the cilantro and doing the parsley and all of that. And those women had to pick a bunch of that product, wrap it. It was very time consuming. Wrap it, and they were paid a penny for each amarre. And so the wages that people earned, still there was a pecking order. The men got the better paying jobs because they were assumed to be the breadwinners in the house, and the women got the worst jobs.
That's
Great
beautiful.
Music. Oh, great music.
Thank you.
So
Wow.
that is for those of you that just joined, that is just a short piece that Laura Varela, filmmaker, has edited, that is going to be part of a full documentary. Hello, Lillian.
Yes.
Welcome. Part of a larger piece, a documentary on Rebecca Flores, one of our featured changemakers, labor leader, civil rights leader, and as Lourdes said in the very beginning, somebody who has always led. Her leadership is informed by her own service and integrity, and that's what inspires people, by example. And yeah, I'll put that back so that we don't have any echo.
Good troublemaker, Rebecca.
Yes.
We
The
love
best.
you. We love you, and we have taken from you so much leadership and cues of how to be. Just the very basic gift that you have given us is how to be with each other and towards each other, and how to really listen. And it continues through the work that you do every day. So we thank you for that. And we'll open up for questions or
Yeah, and also Rebecca, if you and before we started, you told us the story of the photo, right? Of that. And I want to also kind of bring it forward to today, because you still are such an important part of any community and any force for social good that you're a part of. Also, one of our peace laureates of San Antonio as well. And so if there are other stories, like, after this, so the kids are growing up, and there are other things that other stories about being in the movement, particular to women, particular to some of the things you talked about with Laura. Can you tell us a little more of that history?
Well, just watching that little short thing just makes me want to cry. It's like, oh my God. And it's happening today. There's just no way, when you look at even all the work that the union has done for all of these years. If you remember, the union was set up in 1962, and we still have, there's agriculture all around the country, more so in some states than others, but nevertheless agriculture. And those workers who harvest that food that's on your kitchen table every day are still paid the worst wages, and they're given no benefits. Many of them have no documents, and there's nothing for people without documents in this country. And so when I see that and think about that, it's just like never ends. And I'm so sorry that I'm 78 years old and I just can't keep doing it any longer. You know what I'm saying? Here I am in San Antonio, so I do what I can. In terms of reaching out to people who live in the margins, because there's so many people who live in the margins. And so here I am, sitting in my house in San Antonio. I'm okay. I have a house, I have heat, I have whatever. And yet there's so many folks here in San Antonio who don't have that. And so I do a little bit of work. I'm putting lists together to get people vaccinated. I help people who suffered in the freeze by getting them food. I'm not doing that. Other people are doing it, but I find them. And so there's always work to do. As an organizer who saw the stuff that I saw, you can't give up. You really can never. You really can never rest. You really can. It's really amazing, and probably y'all are the same in the work that you all do. But I just really can't. There's always issues. Until you die, there's always issues that you have to take up and do something about.
You said something really important. I think one of the things that we work very hard on behind the scenes at VoxFem is to recognize that ageism, among many other things that we work on, but ageism also internalized, because we think that doing something is like, when it comes to like the delivery of the food or a vaccine or whatever, it's the person like handing it to you or giving you the shot. But actually there's a whole chain of people doing that work. So it may be that when you were in this picture, you might have been like, physically hauling things, and now you're not able. But that doesn't mean you have never stopped being an essential part of that work. And I think it's important for people to know that, and it's a part of dismantling ageism as well. I think that people who I remember Lourdes' grandmother at some point, she only went from her bedroom to the other room, and yet her presence at almost 99 years old had become so powerful, and her kindness and her ability to just, like, you walked in the room and you felt love. It was healing to people. To this day, people talk about it. People in the family, people who are not in the family, who just met her, and that's work. That's a culmination of a life well lived. And so I think that you bring that up, and it's an important one. And that's also one of the reasons we honor that, because we see you. We see you.
Yeah, I've been working with a young woman who works with Metro Health here in the city, and we're always talking about how the institutions that are supposed to serve us really don't, because they just stop at the institution door, right? And they don't reach out into the community unless you're able to access it, right? You have to access it.
Exactly. Right.
So the question is, how do you make the connection between that institution to those folks who can't access it for whatever reason? And as I get on the phone calls with these folks who are 80s and in their 90s, who have to tell me, I have been dialing and dialing and dialing to get a vaccine and I can't. And so they call me because I put my phone number out there through my church and through people. Yeah. And man, my phone has never quit ringing, and it's been weeks since I let it out. And so people call, and they're all raza, they all are Spanish speakers, and so that they're elderly, right? Because there is a break, right? Because we were slapped around when we were going to high school and said you can't speak English, but we did. But I think kids got slapped around even later than that, and so they lost their language completely. And so when you get a Spanish speaker on the phone with you, you know that they're elderly and that they haven't been able to access stuff. And so they call me, and they're actually hilarious. They tell me all about that. And we compare notes, right? So they say, no, and my kids, they're all they do is hassle me. Have I got an appointment? Have I got an appointment? Have I got my vaccine? She says, please get me on that list. Anyway, I have about 5 or 6 women who I'm threatening to put on a teatro campesino like that, where we do all the stuff that we've been going through with our children, with our phoning, with our whatevers, trying to get the vaccine. But it is hilarious, and it's just really, really funny. But nevertheless, we have to laugh at it. They also tell me that I'm the first human being they've talked to in this quest for the vaccine, which is also pretty sad, right?
Yeah.
Because they haven't been able to access anything. So
that's right. The digital divide.
Even though I get phone calls late at night, and of course I'm in bed by 8:30. Anything after that, I'm just I'm not going to answer it, but I have. But it's been my joy to continue to answer phone calls, because I know that these people are desperate. They are desperate to get some information, and I give them as much information as I can. So yeah, there's always work, no matter what age you're in and capacity you're into. But there's always work to do.
Tell them who they think you are when you answer the phone.
So one time I was talking to this woman. I said, look, because every center has its restrictions, right? Well, only 75 and over, or 65 and over with underlying health issues. Nobody under 60. Anyway, there's all kinds of issues. And so I was talking to this woman, and I said, no, señora, no la puedo poner en la lista. And she said, no, that's okay. She says, I'm going to call the Alamo Dome tomorrow morning early. And I said, because I know that there's no phone call to the Alamo Dome. And I said, is that right? What number are you dialing? Because I wanted to know. I said, what number are you dialing? She said, so she says 210-842-9502. And I said, señora, ese es mi teléfono. Yo no soy el Alamo Dome. I'm not the Alamo Dome. So people think that I am the Alamo Dome now. And
you kind of are. You kind of are.
So I know that Lourdes and Vanessa are calling me now Rebecca A. Oh my God, it was so funny. I just fell out. Anyway, now I am the outlaw dome telephone number.
Rebecca and Flores. Laura, you were saying something?
Oh, the digital divide. So I spent I was supposed to spend 2 weeks in El Paso, and it turned into three and a half because of the freeze and stuff. But since when we were there, me and my sister were helping our tias and our mom's cousin, the elders. They couldn't sign up for the vaccine because it was either you had to do it through the internet, and then you had to have a text message and email. That was the way they'd get back to you, and she couldn't do either of them.
Yeah, no.
So yeah,
work.
she had a modem, but she didn't have it connected to her new phone, so we had to help her with all of that. And then we had to sign her up and then send the text message to her partner who does do text message. And so like it's this whole this thing, that it's difficult for them to sign up if that's the only way to sign up.
It's
like a
very difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So, but we work at it. And I really haven't even sent that many names in. I think about 300 names through the different systems that they've let me do. But now they don't want to do that anymore. They just want people to text that text number, and then they come back at you. And if you don't answer it within 30 minutes, you're out of luck.
30 seconds. Yeah.
If you don't answer it,
once again, the digital divide,
does not work. Does not work. I don't know how you can get them to understand this, but they don't.
Yeah. And then I also wanted, Rebecca, when you were talking about the conditions of the farm workers, I also wanted to point out that farm workers and people who are working in the poultry industry and in the beef in the factories, they're really, really susceptible to getting COVID. They had really, really high numbers and outbreaks of COVID. And they're considered essential workers. So I hope the vaccination efforts in this country are really, really trying to target farm workers and people who are working in the food industry that way. Or what would that be called, like in the factories? The meat factories. I don't know what it's called.
That's because they're
aside from the fields, that's
because they're inside and they're more susceptible to it. But
agriculture workers.
Yeah. But I think California is starting it, but that it hasn't gotten here to Texas, they as soon as
and if Texas requires documentation and citizenship and all that stuff, so if people their status is still not settled, it's going to be difficult to get them vaccinated.
But San Antonio hasn't. Nobody has said you have to be a citizen. They just have to show either the matricula or just show some ID. But they've never required citizenship or residency status.
Good.
So I hope they don't try to push that anywhere else.
Yeah, I just feel like it's just selective depending on the counties and the people who are administering, right? We're in a really lovely spot in San Antonio. We're in this little oasis, right?
Yeah, I think in South Texas where you have so many people, I know my brother lives down there and he says it is horrendous to try to get any kind of vaccination, any kind of attention. And of course that has one of the highest number of deaths among people. Is a lot border, in Rio Grande City, Starr County, Yellow County, and but they just don't have a system, and it's just a lousy leadership. I think we have such lousy leadership everywhere, and they don't listen. They just don't listen. Ugh, just throw your hands.
A lot of work to do.
We need to elect more people like you, and we need both our elders and our young folks. And we've talked about it before. I know that sometimes being an elected official requires sometimes that physical those physical requirements, and I think we need to eliminate some. I think part of changing the system is changing the whole electoral system, the whole campaigning, all of it, because there's ways that we need to have councils of people who can actually give counsel, who actually listen and have the ability to help us make decisions, and decisions coming from the people, coming from the bottom up, right?
But one of the things that is so revealing and so just broad is that a lot of these connections are based on trust. And I think that part of what I see on this clip and in your broader life, and what we're going to see once this documentary is complete, is that the basic need to establish trust is actually the door that we have. And so once you open that door, people then come with you to that other door of the institutions that are being controlled, so that we can together demand things. And that's what you've done with your life and the work and the United Farm Workers. And it's obvious that it's like, well, these people lead by example. I can be here with my children, and then you come with me. We're going to push this in the legislature. And so it's a trust issue, and that connection, you haven't lost it. You have actually cultivated it, and it's majestic. It's so beautiful. So we celebrate you. We have a lot of problems in front of us, but we are so lucky to have somebody like you living history with us, so that we can continue to push for those things, given the narrowing of the spaces that are happening right now.
You know,
can I say one of my favorite things about what Rebecca said about when she went to school in Michigan is that she got her degree in social work and organizing, but that she never worked in social work just as an organizer. But I taught her, but your organizing work is social work, you know. So
yeah. We actually, when we were in school, we had a lot of Chicano activists that were there, Chicanas. Actually, I was the only Chicana there in the first year. All the others were guys. There was 6 of us. We broke the brown color barrier at University of Michigan School of Social Work. It was crazy. That was in '72. You believe that? But it was really because the Blacks had a strike the year before. They had connected, the students, Black Action Movement students had connected with the service employees of the university to raise the wages for the service employees. And so one of the demands, we closed the school down. One of the demands was they had to recruit more minority students. And that's really how I got in. There was no other reason. It wasn't because I was very smart. I just got in because I knew somebody who knew somebody, and I got into the university. And that was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. I got out of the state of Texas because Texas is horrible, you know. And in the 70s, it was even worse. It was like nothing was going on. For women, there was nothing going on. At St. Mary's University, I was going to school there, and that's where all the Chicanos got out of there. If y'all been watching Cottrell's story on in the newspaper, Charlie Cottrell, he had Ernie Cortez, ¿cómo se llama? Jose Ángel Gutiérrez. He had Willie Velázquez. He had Nacho Pérez, all in his classes. And that was the leadership, right? The Chicanos. But the Chicanitas, we were like nowhere. And so I was thankful I got out of the state of Texas and got to see a lot of movement among African Americans, among brown people, among women, among the gays, and also the anti-Vietnam War movement, which was big and going strong there. And I thank my lucky stars that I left the state of Texas. Otherwise, I'd have been stuck here with, you know, whatever, doing social work, doing the traditional social work, which was different. And so when we got there, we said, there's nothing wrong with people. The problem are the institutions, and that's what we were organizing around, or trying to change those institutions. And so it was there that I met Cesar. And you know that I was a farm worker when I was young, when I was little. My first experience and memory of working in the fields was when I was 5 years old. We worked at planting strawberries in Atascosa County, and so I remember we had a crew. We had 2 crews. It was my sister Susie, me, and my mother, and then the other crew was my sister Clarissa, Helen, and my father. So we had 2 rows, and we were planting strawberries. So my sister Susie would poke a hole in the ground. I would drop the strawberry plant, and mother would cover it. And that's how we would go, and we would finish the rows. And the reason I remember it is because I had a pile of strawberry plants in my arms, and they had ants on them. And so all of a sudden I felt all the ants covering my body, and I was, you know, trying to get them off. And that's really what I remember, was that the ants were all over my body. and I was trying to get them off. And that's how I remember that moment, right? That I was working in the fields when I was 5 years old. And so of course we picked strawberries. We picked all the stuff in the Atascosa County. We picked cotton, and then we got a little bit older, and then we started going to South Texas and picking cotton in the summer months. And those were experiences that stay in your mind, because at that time there was nothing for farm workers. There was absolutely nothing for farm workers. We didn't have drinking water. We didn't have toilets. We didn't have wages. We had nothing. We had to pick a sack of 100 pounds to get $1 for 100 pounds. And we had to haul that sack, weigh it, and then dump it, and then go back and pick again. In the heat of South Texas, Corpus Christi, have you ever been around Corpus Christi when it's summertime? It is miserable. But we were there. I mean, we just took, we just took it. We there's no complaining here. We knew that we had to work. And one year in 1954, there was a big drought in Texas. And Dad just couldn't grow anything anymore, and nobody could. And so Dad said, well, we need to migrate. And so we migrated the summer of 55. All of us, except my oldest sister, who had just graduated from high school and had landed a job here in San Antonio. So we all got in our little car and drove thousands of miles to Wisconsin to work in the sugar beet industry. We were hoeing the sugar beets, and then onions, and then cherries. We picked cherries. And it was there where I began to see, and I didn't understand it. Let me just say this, that I didn't come to be enlightened until much later. But I saw it, right? I saw it, that we had these hundreds of people working in the fields, and there was like nothing for us. We just had the crew leader. We had no drinking water. We had a haul out. We were little. I was in 55. I was 12 years old, and we're skinny. We're skinny kids because we had no good nutrition. And so we had to haul these wooden ladders. You know how heavy wooden ladders are? We had to haul them from tree to tree to pick cherries. We had to throw them up on the cherry tree and pick the cherries and fill up pails of cherries and then go drop them and then climb up again and move that ladder from tree to tree. No toilets. I don't know how many times we found other people, relieving themselves in the woods. It was. And then our barracks where we lived were 2 stories, and those are outlawed unless you have ways of, there was no exit. If there was a fire, you were done. These are old Army barracks. And then we had outhouses, and there was hundreds of us in one outhouse. It was disgusting. And so, we're all in the same boat. And so we came back at the end of all that work. We did onions. And then we came back at the end of the summer, and we had nothing to show for it. I mean, it's just something to get us through the winter. Even though we had traveled thousands of miles up there and back in our car with our expenses, and the dangers of traveling thousands of miles in these little cars with 8 people in it. You believe that? 8 people in a little car. And you just risk our lives in her for what? Just for what? For absolutely just to eke out a living for the rest of the winter until spring, when we could start working again in the fields. And that's how the lives were. And so it wasn't until later, and I just got it. The reason I'm saying this is because I just got an email from somebody saying, at what point did you become an activist in the labor movement? And I'm thinking, I don't think there is a point. For me, there was never a point. It was just a culmination of events and experiences that I began to saw and register. And then, of course, Caesar coming along and saying, hey, man, you don't have to put up with this. And we thought, what? Is that true? We don't have to put up with this stuff anymore. And it was because he was a Mexicano and he spoke our language. And I met him in 1972. In 1971, I met him when I was in Michigan, because he used to come to Detroit all the time, because United Auto Workers was a big supporter. Walter Reuther was a big supporter of the United Farm Workers. And so Caesar would come up to Detroit all the time and to promote the boycotts and, and to connect with people. And so we went to a lot of the Chicana students who were in Ann Arbor went to see him that time. And he looked us in the eye and he said, okay, you need to go back to work, can't forget where you came from. And he said, because you're going to be eaten up by corporations because they all want you. And the truth is that most of us who were in that group remembered that. And we all, actually, a lot of us went and put a lot of our years with the United Farm Workers. And out of that, I stayed 30 years, and Arturo Rodriguez, who was president of the United Farm Workers, was there also. And of course, he just retired, and I think he put in 30, if not more years than I did in the union. And so we took it to heart, and we did. But that was really the enlightenment came when a person who looked like us told us, you know what, you don't have to put over that stuff. And the only way to get around it is by organizing and doing the work that has to be done. And so we came back and started working in South Texas, which at that time, had no organization. I mean, there was some activism going on, but in terms of really profound organization, there was little. And so that was the work that we began doing and did for a long, long time. It's a long story.
Amazing.
I have a question,
Yes, Liliana.
Rebecca. So when you were working in the fields, and you said they didn't give you water, so what do you guys do? Go dehydrated all the time?
Well, a lot of it was. I'll tell you the other thing. I remember my sister always had UTIs, right? It was because we didn't want to pee. We didn't want to have to go to the bathroom. And so we limited our intake because we didn't know. You know what? We're so ignorant when we're little. We said, we just said, let's not drink water so we won't have to pee and embarrass ourselves out in the woods, right? And so my sister always had UTIs all forever. And I think I really blame that. Okay, blame that. But if you wanted to drink water, you had to take your own. I do not remember my family taking water to drink. When we worked in South Texas and we picking cotton here in Pearsall, I remember it because we had a crew leader who those wooden barrels, those wooden barrels? He used to put the water in there, and it was coated with fungus, just all of it, green. He'd put the water in there. He'd throw this block of ice in there, and the water would be freezing. I mean, you couldn't even drink it because it was so cold. Your teeth would. So it would limit our drinking there, even in the hot summer months of Pearsall. And then he would listen to this. So he had a tin can, like you have a tin can here of beans or whatever. He would put tie a rope to it so people wouldn't take, and that was our drinking cup. He would tie a rope to it and we would drink out of that. And we just had to do that. It was like there was no other water available. And if you think about it, in the 50s, the thermoses were just like we have now. Everybody has their own little thermos. They were not available. They really weren't. I just don't remember seeing that stuff at all. And of course, we were extremely poor. Extremely poor. So no toilets, no nothing. In 1983, I started working on field sanitation in Texas. And there was, up until if you can believe this, up until 1983, there was no field sanitation for farm workers in the state of Texas. California had just gotten it through their work. Dolores, I think, Huerta is the one that pulled that off in California. But the way we did that was we went to the health commissioner here in Austin. No, the first thing I did was I went to the county judge in Hidalgo County. It was a Mexicano. And I said, what do you think when you see a bunch of workers working in the fields and there's no toilets? And he said, well, and he was a grower. I mean, a cattleman, he didn't grow vegetables. He said, Rebecca, I've never even thought of that. I said, well, what do you think you can do about it? Because the county health department should have been doing something about it. So anyway, he wasn't very interested. And so then we took it to the state health department. And because we found out from a health worker who came and told me, and thank God for him. He says, look, Rebecca, all the guys who are working on highways, they have porta pots, if you notice. And I said, well, yeah, it's true. He says, so why don't you frame your rule based on that, right? And so we did. We took that rule and we took it to the state health commissioner, and we said, what's the difference here? These guys are working on the highway out there. What's the difference with that and people working in the fields? And so he changed the rules. And then there was a whole issue of enforcement. Is because those growers, they don't give a hang about workers. And so anyway, it was a huge fight. And it was disgusting. And I used to take it to the grocery stores. And I imagine I disgusted all kinds of people. But I would say, you know what? The carrots in there were harvested by this grower here. And you know what? Didn't have toilets in the field. And guess where people go? And I would just like tell them. I would tell people, where do you think people are going? In the carrot fields or in the onion fields. And they don't have toilets. So it was like, so we had to do it there. I'm not sure that had a lot of impact. So we had the rule was changed, and then we had to have enforcement. So one day I got the health commissioner. He had been a general in the Army or something. Big guy, I can't remember his name anymore. So I said, I want you to come down and see this. And so he came down on the QT. He didn't tell anybody he's going down there. So I said, I'm going to take you around. And so I forced him to get out of his car and go and check toilets. He says to me, you're going to force me to open those toilets? I said, yeah, you're going to go and see for yourself. And so he would go and open these toilets. They were nasty, or they weren't there, right? They were nasty. And so in one instance, he asked the crew leader, because that's what these contratistas were, the ones that managed the crews. So he said, hey, how come you don't have toilet paper next to in the toilet? He says, no, because people will steal it. And then he said, no, how come you don't have cups for people to drink out? He says, no, because people throw them away. I mean, we're like dealing with really ignorant folks, right? So the next day, he had a meeting with the growers. And so I was there, and the growers are all crying and stuff. Oh man, these workers don't know how to use toilets. You believe that they said that about us? I was so pissed off. He says, no, we have them out there, and they just don't know how to use them. They don't know how to use inside toilets. Oh, I think I had a screaming match at that meeting. But the commissioner got up and said, you know what? You all can cry and talk about what you think is going on in the fields, but I went to the fields yesterday, and this is what I saw. So he kind of like shut them down, but still enforcement was a real hassle. Those growers don't want to spend one penny, not one extra penny that they have to help to provide something for workers, for God's sake, toilets at least. But it was everything I ever did to try to make changes was a fight. It was never easy. Never easy. Never. Not one fight was easy.
What about the sexual harassment of women? Do you think that has gotten any better?
Oh, no.
No?
No. Young women took a risk every time they went into those fields, because they were always, they were always going to be harassed. They were always going to be harassed. Always. Poor things. And then how do you protect that? They have to work. How do you do that? It's just hard. And then, how can they, do an outcry? I don't have any idea. It just, and that's why we've always said, and of course, very, very difficult to get, is that you have to have union contracts. So you at least have a vehicle by which you can do grievances. But if you don't, you're risking yourself. And it's just tough. It's just tough. That's why a lot of times families work together. You have the husband and the wife, and maybe the wife, the mother and some children. So you have a little bit of protection, or the families, relatives that go in and work together and stuff. But boy, if you're out there alone, you just really run the risk of all kinds of stuff. They're predators, girl. Predators. It's all about dominance.
Yeah. There's a question from Patricia Castillo. Hello, Patricia. Also, amazing change maker. Another of our San Antonio Peace Laureates runs the Peace Initiative for working with domestic violence and making those changes that are necessary. So thank you for watching. She has a question for you. did they pay you accurately, or was being ripped off a common experience? You've already talked about how you basically were working for almost nothing, but then was there, was that nothing, that dollar, was that paid accurately, or were there problems even with that?
Well, when I was working in the fields with my family, they gave you little chits, right? If you turned in a pail of cherries, they gave you a little chit. At the end of the day, you would count them, but we never knew, really. We never knew. And the complaint that I always got from workers when I was organizing them was that they would pay cash. They would put cash in a little envelope, and they would mark on there your wage and your deductions, your Social Security deduction or whatever, and then come out with a total. And then, but the fix was on, right? They had to fix everything so that it came out to reflect what the minimum wage was supposed to be at that time. And so you never got your just wage. You never got your just wage. And then the workers would complain to me and say, for example, I remember taking this old man who was ready to get his Social Security, taking him to the Social Security office there in McAllen. And they told him, sorry, there's nothing here in your Social Security account for the work that you did. And the man said, but I worked all my life. And look, here are my pay stubs. Of course, you couldn't go back too far to claim, Social Security. And so they would pocket that, right? They would pocket that, whatever that percentage was, Social Security. And so it was just highway robbery at every level, at the grower level, because he never paid you a decent wage. At the crew leader guy level, who should have been a friend because they knew each other, he would pocket as much as he could. And then they would just put little cash in. So there was just never a way to really figure out what it was you should have been paid. And probably it's not any different now. It's just too loose. It's just too loose because there is no enforcement. The one thing that we also pushed was labor. The Labor Department, the U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division. They were supposed to go and check, the fields and the books and all that kind of stuff to see if people were earning a minimum wage. And it was just two guys, two guys for all the region. Two. So do you think the work was ever done? Of course not. And so then they would say, Rebecca, there's no way we can go out and inspect people's books in the fields. And they said, what we're asking for is for people to come in here to our office, as if that was ever going to happen, right? And file a complaint. One is that they're never going to come into an office in a federal building. The other is that they're never going to file a complaint because then they would be blacklisted. And so it was like there was never a way to really get a handle on all of that. It's just a difficult thing. And then of course there's the piece rates. Piece rates are really what you're paid for, what you pick, right? It's not a minimum wage, it's not an hourly wage, it's a piece rate. And workers like piece rates because when the product is good, you can make some money, right? If the onions are really big, you can make a little bit of money. But when the product is not good, then you don't make nothing. And then that's supposed to equal the minimum wage, which you can't. And then they jiggle around the hours and stuff so that it equals it. There's just never a way of winning it at all. So workers, I don't know what the annual income is for a farm worker, but it's not very much because it's seasonal. The seasons are short, right? In South Texas, the seasons are very short. They start slow, right? And they have a peak and they go down. Peak is when you make most, and then the other two are when you make little, and then you go on to something else. But if you have the spring season, you have maybe the early summer season, then you have the fall season, and that's pretty much it. And there's just about 2 or 3 weeks in each of those seasons where you can make some money. So tell me how you can earn money there. And there are farm workers, people who live off of the work that they earn in the fields. But and you talk about the welfare state. Growers right now, after the freeze, they're talking about the agricultural destruction in South Texas. Like the citrus is probably gone forever now, and all of the row crops are frozen. Okay, those growers are going to get disaster relief, right? they're gonna get disaster relief. But nobody talks about those workers. Those workers are not going to get any disaster relief because many of them are undocumented, and they're not gonna show up in any list. And so those workers are out of luck, and nobody's talking about them right now. And so the growers get subsidized. They get subsidized when their crops are damaged. They get subsidized when they can't sell their crops. They get subsidized big time. And yet all you ever hear about is some poor bloke that's trying to get food stamps. And that's all you ever hear about. Give them a urine test, make sure that they're not on drugs and they can get back to work. Anything possible, to put more, más tierra a la gente que trabaja. Just make them the scoundrels, right?
Yeah.
Those guys who are sitting in their houses, waiting for a check to come in the mail for them, living in nice houses while their workers live in shanty towns. That's why I'm always so pissed off. I need to get over it sometime. But it just pisses me off when I see that.
Yeah.
And then they talk about, they don't know how to use a toilet. Oh, give me a break.
Wow.
So, anybody else have a question that's here?
Did I answer your question, Patricia?
She's watching on Facebook Live.
Oh,
so
she is. Oh, she
but
is.
you can answer on Facebook Live. She's if you're there. But when you say that, I'm thinking about that right now. We've been thinking a lot about how if any relief actually comes through for anybody, but there are so many people who do fall through. Even with that, there are people like you say that don't make the lists at all. And I think one of the things that we know, that artists have been hit very, very hard in this as well. And so, what have they been doing? Well, artists have been helping each other, and that's what activists have been doing, is helping each other, and that's what communities of color have been doing, is helping each other. Nobody has come to save us. So when you're saying that, the one thing I'm thinking about is, we just need to put them on our list. Like, we need to make sure that in this process, like when you were talking about, I got kind of chills when I was thinking about the citrus, because we've all gone through this freeze. We're all looking at what survived and what didn't, just right here, and it breaks my heart. And when you said that, I thought, we haven't even seen the full effect what's happening with the food right now.
Yeah.
And the effects on the farm workers' lives. So I'm glad you're bringing that up, and it's something that I don't want to just bring it up right here and let it drop. I want us to keep that going and make it visible, and because that's what you teach us to do. And so that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna keep that up and see how we can be the network for each other. Not that we can't do everything, right? We don't, and that's not even what we're saying. It's not like, go out there and save the whole world, but we can do what in our networks, and the more we connect with each other, the stronger our networks become. And so yeah, I'm glad you.
Let me do one promotion here. You know that this is the history of farm work in South Texas has been a rough one, right? In 1983, there was a huge freeze, knocked out a lot of the citrus industry then. Then in 1993, NAFTA hit, and most of the vegetable crops went across the border, right? Because everybody's always looking for a lower wage, right? And so all the growers that had vegetable crops that could move real quickly went across the border. So the citrus was destroyed. Then the vegetable crops went across the border. And then there was another, there's been some other freezes, but this one, this last couple of weeks ago, was a very destructive freeze, and so pretty much the citrus industry is gone. But NAFTA had changed a lot of the valley where because NAFTA was, well, we'll make the product in Mexico and bring it here, and you can transport it, you can package it, transport it, and send it out to the rest of the country. And so what happened is that pretty much the valley from Brownsville up to Mission are cities now. They're very little agricultural land. And so when that happened, I said, well, my farm worker membership is depleted, so you can't do much if you don't have members, right? And so what happened is that the union had an organization called LUPE, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, And so they kind of took over and did a change where it would be community organizing, not only farm worker organizing, but community organizing. And so they developed colonias, organized colonias around from Brownsville over to Rio Grande City, as a matter of fact, now. And so they have been the lifeline for their members. They have something like 10,000 members. And so, when you have 10,000 members, you have access to, another thousands of people, because you connect that way. And so they have been actually during the freeze, they were trying to get people some money to buy quilts and to buy, different things to protect themselves and to get food and all of that. And so even in the pandemic, they were getting money for distribution of masks and stuff. So Lupe, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, has been doing the nitty-gritty work in South Texas that needs to be done to connect folks who have no institutional connection, people who don't have documents, people who are disabled, people who live in colonias who are totally isolated from anything, from water, from anything. It's just another world, really, down there. Another world.
So that's one of the that's a community group that we can help, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, right?
La Unión del Pueblo Entero,
Okay,
yes.
I'll put that in the links.
Good.
And Patricia said absolutely y demás, that you answered her question.
Good. Good.
Anybody else have a question for Rebecca? Laura, is that you? No? Lourdes, did you have a question?
No. Go ahead. No, yeah.
Well, I just in between, there's so many things, right? How do you go over such, a life of so much work? But one more thing that I think is very relevant today, and undergoing some changes. We're trying not to be too hopeful, right? Just don't want to be devastated again. But
devastated by hope.
But between and simultaneously with this work, and also today with the vaccine work, there has been the issue of family separations of asylum seekers, and we've worked together on some of that as well, when people were being dropped off at bus stations here in San Antonio in the middle of the night, and you continued to go. I know, bringing coats and backpacks.
We received one of those calls.
And so I just, there was just such atrocity against this group of people, another vulnerable group of people, that continues. And so just, can you say anything about what you see happening now? And, are you hopeful that there are going to be changes? Where are we at?
Or what's been done that we may not know, or people haven't
on
heard
the
about.
ground, as well, because people focus on the top, but what, back to the grassroots.
Well, as you know, I fell and bought some land here in my front porch a couple of weeks ago. So I have been not as mobile as I wanted to be, and it was right at the point where I was already getting out, and I had my second vaccination. I thought, well, I can start getting out and doing some stuff. But this is the current stuff that's happening, as far as I know, is that the people from Africa, for some reason, were able to get through. In Haiti, a lot of Africans and Congolese were coming through, and they, of course, by and large, do not have relatives in this country, because they've been, you talk about wandering around the world, because they left Africa, they go to South America. Actually, some number of children are born in South America. They learn Spanish. They learn and then they come through, through Central America and through Mexico, and they've taken years to get to do that voyage. It's really amazing. It's amazing how that is. And so they finally get through, and because they have no relatives here, by and large, they go to areas. I think Maine is one of them, where there is a congregation of folks from their country, and people are developing some connections there. But to get there, they have to figure stuff out. And so the city City of San Antonio has some hotels here that they give these folks some place to stay and rest, and then make their connections, and then continue on their journey. And so the people from Africa, I noticed they're doing that. So now it's changed, right? And so we're having a lot of people who were being detained by that MPP, that Stay in Mexico program that Trump had. There were thousands of in Matamoros and all the little towns in El Paso and all up and down over to San Diego, and who are now coming through. And so I understand, and this is just a phone call that I had with one of the women who's doing the bus station here, is that in Del Rio, the organizers there who are helping out were chartering buses. And so they were, because buses, the bus cost is expensive. Greyhound caught on to the fact that people wanted to ride the buses, and they jacked up the fares big time. And so what they're doing in South Texas, in Del Rio at least, is they're chartering buses, and they're getting people to because by and large, Latinos, people from Central America, have people here already. So people here, their relatives, they'll still pay, for their transportation. And so it's just a matter of getting them from Del Rio up to their area. So that's what I know is happening there. Now, the other things, and I'm just hearing because of what they're saying about Biden and what he's doing, is they're trying to change the what they call the detention centers and do more like an Ellis Allen kind of thing, where you just move people through, get them, whatever they have to do to get on through and on into their families. And I think it'll take a little bit of time to set that kind of situation up, but I think it's going to work because we don't want them in detention centers anymore. We just don't want them being kept there for so long. And that's been always the fight that we've had, is that they shouldn't be there. That people should not be in jails. Oh, it's just awful. So it looks like things are getting a little bit better and should be working better, in the months to come.
And one of the groups that's working there in Del Rio, in that area, is the Angry Tias, right? The Angry Tias. So
Angry Tias in Abuelas. I think those are in Brownsville, Matamoros, and in the Valley. I don't know who is up there, but maybe they've expanded. I don't know. But those women are pretty good. And Sister Norma Pimentel, who's with the Catholic Charities, did fantastic work in getting the issue raised. It's nothing better than a nun talking about stuff. And so she went all over the country, talking about this issue, which is good, she was a good promoter of being, doing what's right in this country.
Great. Anything else? Anybody else have any questions? Or Rebecca, you have anything else that you want to tell us?
No, I do always want to plug this. Is the whole idea of organizing. And organizing where you establish a foundation for an organization. And there's different kinds of organizing. And I always thought that the kind of organizing that we did in terms of farm workers in South Texas, where we did house meetings, where we talked to people one-on-one in groups of 10, people who knew each other, and organized an organization in each of the colonias in South Texas. That what you have to do is build a foundation of people who trust each other and who trust you, because unless we have that kind of, and frankly, I think we have very few organizations anymore. I just don't see them, and I think that's going to be, if we're going to ever do any changes anywhere, is that we're going to have to start establishing organizations that where people know each other and trust each other. And otherwise, I think it's going to be the politicians talking to us rather than us talking to politicians.
Yes.
Right.
Well said.
Yes.
Well,
so right now, what I'm putting in the comments of the live on Facebook, and we'll put it. It'll also. I think we're also on YouTube. We'll put it. If not, it'll be right after this. And on our website as well. I'm putting the link to voxfem.org, where we have the page for Rebecca Flores. And what I mentioned at the beginning, I'll mention now as well. Laura Varela, filmmaker, Chicana filmmaker extraordinaire. is going to turn this clip into continue working and make what's needed, which is a documentary on this. If you've heard this today, you see why we need to do this documentary.
Yes.
And so, you know, there may be somebody out there who wants to just fund the whole film. That's great messages. But also, as people who've always worked with, you know, workers and people who don't have large amounts of money, it doesn't mean we can't make things happen. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is provide the opportunity. If you want to see your name in the credits of this historic film, anybody who gives $25 or more, and the information will be there. It goes to Red Salmon Arts, and I want to give them a shout out as well.
Yes.
Red Salmon Arts and Resistencia Bookstore is our umbrella. This is a project under the umbrella of them. We go back a long way with Raul Salinas. It's his birthday month. And Lilia Rosas, who is part of VoxFem as well, VoxFem Chicana India, who is just an amazing part of this team and keeps us running. I want to also mention the AKR Foundation that has also funded VoxFem, got us off the ground.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. But we're going to offer this opportunity for $25 or more. For the film, all you do is we're going to put RF film, Rebecca Flores film, in the notes so that they know that it goes to the film. And there's a PayPal and a Venmo there, and you tell us in what name, in your name or in memory of someone that you lost. People have asked for that, and we're gonna get this film made.
Yes.
And along with it, it just has a ripple effect. All of these links and all of these connections just get amplified.
Yes.
Well, I want to say that I think that's great. That's a great idea. And I'm going to give money for each of my brothers and sisters and my children because
You're killing us.
And
then also, let me just recognize that you, Lourdes and Annette, Liliana, and Lillian Stevens, I've known you all forever. And you all were such a part of everything that I did. Liliana did some art for us. Remember that t-shirt, Liliana? And that poster? And you all were at the picket lines with me in front of HEB. And you just cannot forget all of the support that you've given, not only to the effort that I had, but to so many other efforts to try to make this world a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Laura, of course, you, with all the patience you've had, patience and joke.
My honor. I'm honored.
Whatever you need, Rebecca.
This festival is
It's now a crying festival.
It's very emotional. Well, there's a lot of joy. We've gone through such loss. I mean, day after day, the news is like, I mean, how much bad news can people take, and how much, not just news. I mean, it's the personal. Everybody has a personal journey of pain and sorrow, loss, and rage.
But we counter it with love, and I have
Yeah.
to say that that's the most beautiful thing about this group here, is that there's so much love and beauty coming out from everybody, that it's just, that is what that's what keeps everybody alive and hopeful, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's not new. It's like we're kind of coming up from under the ground, right? This is the time where these roots are gonna flourish. And so we ask you to be a part of that. Please share it. Please help us grow. This is just the beginnings of VoxFem. I just want to say what's tomorrow, and then
Annette, can I say something?
Yeah.
Just 1 second. I'm sorry, my camera is not working anymore. So at a certain point, I lost the video, but I was here all the time. And I just want to say thank you very much to Rebecca and Laura. That was really inspiring. And I agree with the fact that what Annette and Lourdes do is just precious. And we just need it. It's, one reason to be here in the world. So thank you very much. I was overwhelmed with the narration, and so I couldn't really speak. I had so many questions that I have to, I have to settle a little bit in the next days and start thinking about properly, because I'm really overwhelmed with emotions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorena. It's nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Here.
And
I've heard so much about you.
and the same, I've heard so much about everybody. And already I met Laura, so I knew her, but Rebecca is a new acquaintance for me. But yeah, Lourdes and Annette are, they are the connection.
They are.
And it's amazing. So thank you. This is all because of you. You made it happen.
It's everybody
everyone.
here. And Lorena Carbonara is in southern Italy in Bari, and she is the host of VoxFem Italy, and that's on our website also. So you can go to voxfem.org, and you can click on all the programming and see all the different programs that we have, including the festival that now this is day 2 of 8 days of programming. And we just want to say what is tomorrow.
Yes, what is tomorrow. Also, Liliana Wilson is the visual art
curator of VoxFem. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And tomorrow we have Dr. Tamara Dixon is an interview with Dr. Annette Darmata, and they're going to talk about integrative medicine in the treatment of mental health and the power of storytelling. It's a very amazing interview, very informative, and just it's awesome. It's just a beautiful conversation between these two colleagues.
Same time, same bat cave, same Zoom cave. Okay, tell your friends, come back tomorrow, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.